Welcome to BomiChess. Today we're going to talk about a famous chess player from 18th century, named Philidor. Philidor was a French chess player. He was born in 1726, and his full name was actually François-André Philidor. And Philidor is actually a nickname that King Louis XIII gave to his grandfather. And his grandfather was playing oboe, so his whole family was a musical family. And his grandfather was playing in front of the King Louis XIII, and he reminded the king of some Italian virtuoso named Philidori. So that's why he gave the nickname to his grandfather Philidor. And the nickname stuck in the family, and everybody was using it as a surname, actually, in the future generations. So Philidor was also into the music. He was a very good composer, and his first piece he composed when he was only 11 years old. And it was performed in front of the King Louis XV. So Philidor went on to compose many more operas during his lifetime, and he was also a very good chess player. So when he was 15, he was playing chess already at the famous Café de la Régence in Paris, and then he started taking lessons from the famous Légal de Kermour, who was the best French player at that time. So in the beginning, Kermour gave him the rook odds, but only in maybe 2 or 3 years, young Philidor already became so strong that he was stronger than Légal. So when he was 18, in 1744, Philidor performed his first blindfold simultaneous exhibition, where he played 2 opponents, and everybody was astonished by this feat. This was something unheard of at the time. So people were even willing to be witnesses of this, to put their names as witnesses, so that future generations would believe it, that this was possible. So nowadays this is a common thing, not so common, but we still know that many players can do it. But back then it was something that is impossible for a chess player, to play a few games blindfolded. In 1749, Philidor published his book, his famous chess book, Analysis of Chess. And this was something that was used by every chess player for the next century at least. And in that book, he said that pawns are the soul of chess, his famous sentence, meaning that pawn structure is going to define the outcome of the game. And he has many good games in that book. And the game that we are going to look at it today is one from that book from 1749. So in this game, Philidor was white, and his opponent, which we are not sure who was the opponent, is black. So let's see how did the game go. So Philidor played e4, we have e5, f4, so king's gambit. It's accepted, pawn takes on f4, and here we have this bishop to c4. So it's developing the piece and attacking this f7 square. We have this queen to h4, check, king to f1. Now we have this pawn to d6. He is preparing his bishop to play it. And now we have this knight on f3. So white is attacking the black's queen here. Now this bishop went to g4, and it's pinning this knight to the queen. So we have this pawn to d4. So if white took the queen, black can take the queen, and black has a good position. So white is not interested in that. He played d4, attacking the center. Now white has strong center here, and also developing the bishop. It's attacking this pawn on f4. So black plays this g5. It's protecting this pawn on f4, and we have knight to c3. And here black played queen to h5. Now we have this pawn to h4, attacking the pawn on g5, and pawn to h6, protecting this pawn once more. And here white put his king on f2, protecting this knight once more. So here bishop took the knight, pawn takes, and now we have this queen to g6. And this is allowing white to play this pawn takes on g5. The point is now the pawn cannot retake, and this is strong pawn structure, but because the pawn is pinned to the rook right now. So black must take with the queen, so this pawn structure is not the best one. So we have this knight right away to e2, attacking the pawn on f4. And we have this knight develops to d7, black is preparing his queenside castling. And here white takes the pawn on f4, and queen went back to d8. The problem is that here the queen is x-ray attacked by the bishop. So here white plays this pawn to c3, protecting this pawn on d4, and also allowing this white queen to go for this diagonal. We have this knight to b6, attacking the bishop, and bishop trades to d3. Maybe better square would be b3, so that it's now attacking this pawn and holding this long diagonal. But playing to d3 actually allows white to push his pawns on the queen side. So we have this queen to d7, allowing this queenside castling, and bishop to e3, developing the piece. Black castles queen side, and a4, pushing the pawn and attacking these pawns in front of the king. So king to b8, allowing the black knight to retreat, and pawn to a5. So knight goes back to c8, and pawn to b4. Protecting this one, but also the plan is to attack these pawns in front of the king. So we have pawn to c6, preventing this pawn to go to b5, but it doesn't matter, white still plays it. And here black takes the pawn on b5. So white pushes the pawn on a6. He would like to see this trade of pawns, because then this rook is too strong here on a file. But black doesn't go for that. Of course, he plays the pawn to b6. And here we have this queen to b3. So now this queen is also coming into the action. We are attacking this pawn 2 times, and it's also creating threats here for black's king. So black is trying to develop his knight to f6, and white takes this pawn on b5. Attacks the queen as well, so queen to c7, and white plays this pawn to d5. This is now a very strong structure of white pawns, and this bishop can also come here. It's gonna be protected by this pawn on d5. So we have this bishop develops on this long diagonal, and bishop to c6. Knight jumps to d7, and now this knight can maybe come here, this is good square, and attack this bishop as well. So white retreats his knight to d3, and we have knight to e5, and knight trades, and this bishop takes here, aiming for this pawn. He doesn't want to take with the pawn because that will block his bishop. So okay, black bishop takes on e5, and we have this pawn to f4, attacking the bishop. So bishop goes back to g7, and white plays the bishop to d4. White wants to trade the bishops. So okay, bishop takes, pawn takes, and now this file is open for attacking. And queen to e7, attacking this pawn on e4. So white protects this pawn by playing king to f3. We have this rook to g8. Black is putting the rook on this open file, and white does the same. So white is aiming for attack on black king. Okay, rook to g6. Now it's gonna try to create attack against white king. And okay, here bishop to b7 and rook to g8. Now creating this battery here, and if white doesn't do anything, it's gonna in next move gonna play g3 and attacking the king and the queen. So black is going to take the queen. So white is not going to allow that. He played rook takes on c8, getting rid of one rook. Rook takes, bishop takes, and king takes here. Here white plays another rook on c1. So now it's still attacking this black king. Black goes back to b8, and here we have queen to c4. Now creating this battery here, and this is going to be checkmate if black doesn't do anything. So of course black plays this queen to d7, protecting this square here, and white plays this pawn to f5. Also the point of this move, it's preventing this checkmate, but it's also attacking this square here. So if white is not careful, next move black is going to play this queen here, check, and in 2 moves white is going to be checkmated. Queen, rook, and queen. So okay, white prevents this by playing this pawn to f5. Queen cannot go now to h3, and it's also attacking this black rook. So rook goes back to g8, and now we have this queen to c6, offering the trade of queens. Queen takes, and now white has this strong pawn on c6. So white takes with the pawn, and now he has a passed pawn. So king is blocking this pawn, and we are protecting this pawn with the pawn to d5. So now white has this strong pawn structure here. Black is trying to push his pawn on h5, because now this is a passed pawn as well. But this is easily defended by white, so white plays this rook to h1. So it's attacking this pawn, but there's also another reason why he played this move, because now black must play something that defends this pawn, so he goes for h8. And now white can simply occupy this g file. So rook to g1. Here black is trying to defend this pawn. If it doesn't do anything, now rook can come here and this pawn is gone. So black played rook to h7, but now this g8 square is not defended. So white rook is infiltrating the black's position. So black is trying to push his second passed pawn, but now it's already too late. Rook is going to a8, and now attacking this a7 pawn. So king is trying to defend it. King to b6, but now simple tactics. Rook to b8, check, king to c7, and rook to b7, check. So now this pawn is gone. Black plays this king to d8, and white could have gone for this. He could take the pawn, and after this he can just go back with the rook and push his passed pawn, and that's it. Game is over. But white here actually played this pawn to e5, attacking this pawn here on d5, d6. D6 takes on e5, and here white simply pushes the pawn on d6. And here next move is, if black is not careful, is gonna be checkmate. Rook to b8 checkmate. This is all defended by, guarded by the white pawns. So here black played this king to c8, and now we have this pawn to d7 check. King goes back to d8, and now we have this simple rook check on b8, king to c7, and now we promote this pawn to a queen check. And here black decided to resign, because now in the next move he's going to be checkmated. The only move here is to take the pawn on c6, but after this, rook here, and this is checkmate. So this was today's game from that famous chess book, Analysis of Chess from 1749. Philidor's name is going to be remembered by many chess positions and openings, like Philidor's defense, Philidor's checkmate, where we have that queen and knight smothered checkmate tactics, and positions like rook and the bishop against rook. So I hope that you liked today's video. Write down in the comments what you think about it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.